that escalated very quickly. The difference of opinion over the government's rural school bus program has moved from saber rattling to an outright punch-up over whether or not the plan is the best use of taxpayers' money. The opposition on one side saying it is a grand waste of taxpayers' funds, that it has a better plan, which involves giving financial support to 20,000 students to allow them to make the trek to and from school daily, while the government maintains that its provision of 100+ buses and the fact that this will serve thousands of students daily, giving them a dedicated mode of transportation to and from school, is the better plan, is the better use of taxpayers when we get the perspective of two informed stakeholders as we debate which plan of the two major political parties is best for moving students in rural Jamaica to and from school on a daily basis. It's Lead Story Monday style. Let's start the show. Good afternoon and good evening and welcome to Lead Story on this Monday. My name is George Davis. So good to have you here. And it's another day to advance the education, information, and sometimes the entertainment of this great nation of ours. The issue of the rural school bus program and the government's implementation of same has come in for staunch criticism from the opposition PNP, direct criticism as well. In recent times, the PNP have used constituency conferences to bash this program, calling it a grand waste of time. Now, we all know the design of the government's program, set to be implemented in phases. A pilot program is already in play in the parish of Portland, where the Minister of Transport, Darrell Vaz, has his stronghold of West Portland. That's a constituency he represents in office. Neighboring him is East Portland, represented by his wife, Anne-Marie. And that's where the pilot is, to ferry students in Portland to and from school using buses bought and brought from the United States. The U.S. school bus system previously used these buses. They've been retired by the U.S. authorities. The government has taken them on board. Vaz says, look, these are buses that are used, obviously. They have 100,000+ kilometers on the odometer in some cases. But he says the engines of these buses have a maximum life of 500,000 kilometers. So at 100, 130, there is still a lot of useful life left on the buses, according to Vaz's explanations. And so they are useful for the Jamaican authorities until such time that they need to be replaced. He said 100 will be pressed into service from September, the start of the new school year, and 10 will be kept in reserve to replace those that are in need of servicing or the most serious repairs, so that there is no fall off in the fleet as phase one of the program is being implemented. He's outlined a very coordinated link between the various stakeholders and entities involved in the school bus program, from wardens on the buses retrofitted with the tracking technology to allow parents and guardians to track real-time the movements of buses, principals having a direct line into the person operating the bus, the security features that can serve as a disincentive to hostile and aggressive behavior on the buses. And he says that this will reduce truancy, it will reduce absenteeism, and it will allow families who are unable to afford the fare to send their children to school, give them a route that is safe, reliable, and very cost effective, given that a ride on this bus will only cost $50, regardless of how far that student will have to be ferried by the said bus. The opposition PNP have said, no, that's not the best use of taxpayer money. What they are proposing to do is that those students who are not on path, the program of advancement through health and education, they'll give them a transport subsidy, give a transport subsidy to the families of these students, 20,000 of them, to be able to afford school transportation. And at the same time, the PNP says that, look, private operators, which it says will be squeezed out by the government's school bus program. The government says no, but the opposition says yes, they will squeeze out private transport operators. The PNP is saying, well, rather than squeeze out transport operators, what we will do is to help them to refleet, to develop the fleet that they have, to be able to better serve the adults that they take right throughout the day, they transport right throughout the day, and also be able to have the kind of vehicles to allow them to pick up the children as well and incentivize them to carry the kids. That's effectively what the opposition says its plan is, and according to the opposition, this is a better spend of taxpayers' money, and they say it's a superior plan to that which has been put on the table and is in implementation now from the government's perspective. It's a battle over which plan you believe in, and it's one of the key themes, the key debating points as we head into the general election season. We'll hear from our guests after this break.
Millions of people are attacked by harmful mouth bacteria. The root cause of bad breath, gum problems, cavities, plaque, and tartar. That's why Colgate combined the best science and technology in Colgate Total. Unlike others, its superior formula fights bacteria and creates a powerful protective barrier for up to 24 hours to prevent them from coming back. Take control of your oral health with Colgate Total.
Hey everybody, I'm Yendi, and this is Odyssey with Yendi. In this space, we connect with some of your favorite people as they share their journeys. Here we have some unfiltered conversations as we deep dive into their inspirations, motivations, and experiences to inspire our own life journey.
Odyssey with Yendi, brought to you by Grace and Singer.
The internationally acclaimed On Stage with Winfred Williams.
At a new time, Saturdays at 8 p.m. on CVM TV.
So much more than entertainment.
So I certainly hope that my explanation in segment one gave you a clear idea, as clear as is possible in the time I was allotted, about the various plans, the competing plans of the opposition PNP and the ruling JLP, where the school bus program is concerned, and how best to transport rural students. The upshot for me in the dueling dragons debate between the two sides is that heading into a general election, here we are, where a serious policy difference exists around the transportation of students in rural Jamaica. That for me is a win already, regardless of which side of the argument is the superior side. The fact that this is a serious debate going into an election does suggest to me that the democracy is healthier than we think, regardless of which side of the coin you fall on. Well, the president of the NPTJ, that is the National Parent Teacher Association of Jamaica, Stuart Jacobs, is with me, and the man set to take charge of the Jamaica Teachers Association, Mark Malaver, is also here. He is the CEO, effectively the principal of Yallas High School in St. Thomas. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, George. Good evening to your listeners. Good evening, President-elect.
All right, great. Let me start with the JTA President-elect. Where do you stand on this debate, Mark Malaver, over the rural school bus program as outlined by the government, as being implemented by the government, relative to the proposal, the plan that the PNP have put on the table?
Well, first let me start off that I absolutely agree with you that in terms of this matter being a serious matter for consideration in terms of the debates that are out there. Certainly, I find it to be healthy and I find it to be quite interesting. It shows a level of critical thinking that I have not seen in a long time as to how it is that you solve the issues that are plaguing our education system. By and large, one of the major issues that are plaguing our education system has to do with the punctuality levels of the students, particularly for rural schools. You find, and you'll find in many of the NEI reports, that punctuality in the rural schools is a major issue and a major point of concern. In previous dispensaries, the government currently has a system in place with some rural high schools where they provide the funding to the schools to help with the transportation of students, particularly part students. But in all honesty, even though that is there, especially for those schools who utilize their buses, they are not going to be driving down the road and see a student that is not on part and don't take them. Yeah, but there are wider issues because the reality is that students come from different parts of the community, some deep rural, some across river, all that sort of thing. Yeah. And there are real issues as to how it is that you get the students in. I think both arguments have significant merits, but I also believe that there are some demerits in terms of the arguments as well. The merit with respect to the current status quo with the movement of students as is proposed by the government, I am not hearing the sort of dialogue that I would want to hear in terms of the turnoffs and getting up into some crevice and corner to move the students. One of the major issues that I have in terms of concern is getting all of these students in one space might create issues of student discipline, might result in escalation of fights and tensions. How do you treat with that? Yeah. On the opposition side, I certainly want to hear more details coming from them as to how it is that they plan to really roll this out. To impact the movement of students in a significant way. Those are my issues.
Let me hear Stuart Jacobs, your evaluation of the plan in train from the government. The pilot phase 1 is well underway, and they've said what they will do come September, now that the buses are here, versus the proposal that the PNP have put on the table as a counter proposal to solving the issue of transporting students in rural Jamaica to school.
Thank you, George. 2 years ago, the NPTAJ, in our press release, at the beginning of the school year, we asked for a dedicated, you can call it, a deliberate and dedicated bus service to move our children from one place to the next. And we did it again in 2025, at the beginning of the school year, 2024, sorry, at the beginning of the school year. And finally it's happening. Frankly speaking, it is a good move that it is happening because the parents of Jamaica ask for a couple of things with our children going to school, and that is safety, that it costs where we can afford it, and also that our children are not overly exposed. The new system that started and is to come in September, from all indication, is that safety is there because we also have that we will also witness better behaviors in the school, in the buses. Remember this, based on how this bus system is going to be rolled out, it's going to be an extension of the school because a warden is going to be on the bus to ensure that the behavior is kept. That lewd and slack behaviors that happens on the public transport as it exists now, our children are not going to be exposed to it. What is being proposed is something that I am trying to figure out. And because the parents of Jamaica are trying to move away from the taxis. We're trying to move away from the buses that play the loud music and the adult conversations and the disregard of our children, where physical advances are made of our girls while they're traversing these taxis and packed up like sardines, moving from one place to the next. It affects the teaching and the learning experience for every single child who takes a public transport.
Here, no, hold it right there, Stuart. Hold it right there, Stuart. I have to take the time signal and come right back. I'll give you the chance to finish up after this break. This is Lead Story Monday Style on CVM TV.
Jamaica is paving the way to becoming a republic or future or choice. The time by the Ministry of Legal and Constitutional Affairs is
6:45.
Ganga and Saga have gone to get Christmas.
Yes. Niranjan is in critical condition. We cannot wait any longer. They should come immediately.
Why won't you do the test? Tell me, Kashish, why won't you do it?
Because I'm not pregnant, Ganga. I cannot allow a liar like you to live in my house. Get out of here right now.
The Chaturvedis will never be able to guess who is behind all of this. And hats off to you, Yash.
Yash? Get in the car, then our driver is going to take you straight to your daughter.
Ganga.
Brought to you by
Hyundai or Hyundai. Let's delve deep into the issues. We'll take you beneath the surface.
Greetings and salutations. My name is Orville Higgins and it's another edition of Fan Central.
Talking to the people at the heart of the top sporting stories. Hear from your favorite sportsmen and women and the administrators who work tirelessly to make it all happen. It's live sports talk.
I've written an entire article.
Yes.
Looking at all the major issues every Tuesday at 9 p.m. It's Fan Central.
Continuing our discussion with Stuart Jacobs, head of the NPTAJ, National Parent-Teacher Association of Jamaica, and Mark Malaver, the principal of Yalas High School in St. Thomas and the president-elect of the Jamaica Teachers Association. Before the break, Stuart Jacobs was saying that the government's program as it is being implemented for transporting students in rural Jamaica aligns with what the NPTAJ has been calling for, and he's emphasizing that it's not just about moving the students, but it's how the students are being moved, and the fact that measures are in place to enforce discipline and to ensure that that discipline is maintained, and that the safety of the students is paramount, and that seems to be catered for under this plan, even as he says, well, that there are some more details that he has not heard yet from the opposition to allow him to take a position on the strength of their proposal. Stuart Jacobs, before I took the break, you were saying that the teaching learning experience is being catered to under this government plan being implemented.
Yes, it is, because there's a smoother transition from school to home and from home to school. Also, the fact that there's not that added distraction of the adult music that is played, and also the adult language and conversations that are had with unconscionable adults while our children are moved from one place to the next. Also planning. These buses will have tracking devices in it, and therefore that added safety and comfort is there. Parents can now plan adequately what time their children will move from one area to the next. We've asked our parents throughout the island, there's going to be central points where the children are taken to, and that is usually where they have a problem moving from those areas or reaching those areas. The minor part of the transportation is when they have to go into what is known as the hinterlands.
Yes.
A couple miles up. They will, of course, have to take public transport.
Yes.
And I wish there could be a solution.
Yes. And that's where Mark Malaver had some reservations about the government's plan. So, Principal Malaver, would you agree that based on the feedback from your teachers, I mean, you are in the classroom yourself, now you are the most senior administrator there, but do you get from your faculty that students are flustered, that their mindset is not quite right, given the ordeal, and I use ordeal pointedly, the ordeal that many of them have to endure to get to your school day in, day out?
Well, there's no doubt that there's a level of frustration amongst parents, amongst students in terms of getting to school on time. I always say to my students, No matter what is happening, whether I don't care what is happening, you get here on time. Yeah, it's important that you get here on time. So I understand the level of frustration that many parents, many students face, but there are larger issues. One, and I don't hear us talking about it in terms of what is happening in the home. Why are the students getting up early enough? Are they being supervised well enough? Are they being disciplined well enough to know that they must get out there by 6 o'clock to get the bus? That is something that I'm not hearing the conversation about, because notwithstanding the fact that these facilities are being provided, many of these students are not going to necessarily take up these take these buses.
Principal, if we're guided by what the pilot is showing us so far, and you raised some very important questions. The pilot is showing us that the students are waking up to get to the collection point, at least in the small sample space that we have to operate in. But there is a genuine concern I'm sharing with you about broadly across the island when you increase the reach of the bus program, if there'll be that discipline. But perhaps it is, Principal, that in answering that question you could say, well, rather than waking up early to go wait for eternity and gamble on getting transport, now you have a dedicated mode of transport, so it incentivizes you to get to the collection point. Maybe we could look at it that way.
Yeah, and I accept that, and those are, in all honesty and truth, these are things that must be considered. There is, however, a demographic of students, colleagues, that no matter what, they are not going to want to take these buses, you know. They rather wait on the loot taxis. They rather wait on the loot buses for whatever reason. It requires, and yes, these things are being put in place, but it requires a wider approach to this thing in terms of getting the students to understand the importance of getting to school on time, instilling a certain level of discipline in them. Again, I hear the point about the wardens and that sort of thing. But Stuart, I'm going to tell you something, man. There are some realities that are happening on the ground, you see, in terms of what happens after school and the level of supervision that takes place after school that we are not contending with. And I believe we need to be a little bit more practical. We need to have that dialogue more. We need to have that discourse, that robust discussion in terms of coming up with the solutions and not necessarily be euphemistic.
And so,
in terms of overly euphemistic in terms of the outcome.
And so, Stuart Jacobs, Mark Malava just opened a line there that I wanted to pursue. Because isn't it true then that with all of the elements that are built into this government plan, it will also need the support of, I don't want to call them truancy officers, but maybe that's the best descriptor for them. These collection points where students are expected to mass to go on these school buses, there's going to be needed that kind of presence at these mass pickup points to ensure that the discipline is held while the buses are coming, while the buses are being loaded, so that students board them as per schedule and that it doesn't become one grand loitering spot where conflicts are settled, intra-school rivalry during champs time, quiz time, this kind of competition time, to support the discipline and the order that the bus seeks to provide, especially with the presence of wardens on these buses to maintain the discipline.
These are ongoing problems that schools have been trying to fix. The NPTAG has been very vigilant on that and active, and I'm certain that the government and governments before have tried to stem that. But what we need to look at is the litmus test, the test. What happened in Portland has worked. When you listen to the parents in Region 2, for us is Region 2, when we listen to our parents in Region 2, it has been positive all around.
Yes.
And when I say positive, it means that there has not been any issues per se that is alarming at the pickup points, the bus bay, and so on.
Yes.
And Port Antonio. There's not been any. Now, if we can use what has happened in Portland as a pilot.
Yes.
And we'll spread it through the island, and whatever it is, the nuances that have been there, we address them as we move along.
Yes.
It should happen because we need to look at the bigger picture.
Yes.
The bigger picture here is this. The rural transport, the dedicated and deliberate rural transport is designed to stem some of these issues.
Yes.
Because the buses are going to be on time, the buses are going to be retrofitted for children, and therefore when the buses come, the children will naturally go on it. I think we major in the minor when we say that some children are not going to go on the buses. It's going to happen anywhere you take it.
Hear you on that. I have to leave it there with you. Mark Malava, the last word to you, 20 seconds. Is there enough, you believe, in this government plan for it to succeed?
Well, here's where I'm at. I think it's a start in terms of what the government is proposing and what they want to do. Stuart is right on some things in terms of, there is a need for some sort of program of this nature. What is most important for me is that in the discourse, in the discussion, that we look to come up with the right solutions to treat with the issue of truancy and punctuality and students not being punctual to school.
Hear you on that. Gentlemen, that's all the time I have. Stuart Jacobs, Mark Malava, thank you, gentlemen. All the best to you. Really appreciate your input, and we look forward to the best possible program taking effect and taking hold in